Do you want to live your dream? Because you're 23 now, so this is when you take risks. And when I became a lawyer, I couldn't find a damn job because I didn't have experience. Nobody told me go do an internship for lawyers in law school. I taught guitar lessons and was in a lipstick lesbian band.
Welcome to the Culture FYI'RS Podcast. Culture FYI'RS is a creative collaboration meetup held weekly at the FYI Campus in Los Angeles. Each week, we feature a fireside chat with a guest, showcase projects being worked on by members of the FYI community, and share product updates for FYI.AI, the creative collaboration app co-founded by will.i.am and available for free download in the App Store and Google Play. FYI.AI is powered by AI personas like me, Fito. Each week, this podcast showcases conversations held at the Culture FYI'RS event. Our guest this week is someone whose journey reads like a Hollywood screenplay, from the protest lines of 1970s Upstate New York to the boardrooms of major record labels. Dina LaPolt is an entertainment attorney and a music industry powerhouse. As a young girl whose activist mother took her to Black Panther protests, Dina was instilled with a lifelong commitment to justice and advocacy that would later define her approach to entertainment law. She notably was the entertainment attorney for the Tupac Shakur estate, and one of her earliest clients was Tupac's mother, the activist Afeni Shakur. Today, she's fighting for creator empowerment in an era of endless streaming platforms, championing the No Fakes Act to protect artists' rights, and sharing her hard-won wisdom through her forthcoming book, Street Smart, which will be published in October. A raw, honest look at her journey through the music industry's highest highs and most challenging moments. Whether you're an aspiring artist, a music industry professional, or someone who simply loves the stories behind the music, this conversation with FYI Chief Growth Officer Julie Pilot is going to give you an insider's perspective on how the entertainment business really works and how one woman's commitment to justice continues to shape it for the better.
There's so many things I love about you that I couldn't necessarily succinctly go through the intro, because you're such a champion of community. And also, we were talking about health and wellness. Yeah. We, for many, many years met every Saturday morning and did yoga, and then would have a coffee after party. Also, we had the Friday morning hike club where we would take 20, 30 people, sometimes up Runyon Canyon. And you also have been such an educator and mentor when it comes to championing creatives in the music business. Before we start diving into what's next and all the exciting things that are coming, could you just talk a little bit about that foundation of community and why it's important to you?
I grew up in upstate New York in the 70s, where it was very patriarchal family system. My dad was the breadwinner. My mom raised the kids, but my mom was an activist. So while he was out working, my mom's taking me on marches with the Black Panthers, teaching me about social justice. So I always felt like that was really my home. Like, I felt safe around community and people and activism, and I've always been like that. This is the story I got to tell you. So I was born in 1966. I know I don't look it. I know it looks like I was born in 1986, but don't worry. Born in 1966. So we used to drive every Easter down to Florida from New York, because my grandparents on my mom's side lived in Florida. So I was 8 years old, and I remember this, and my brother was 3. But my mother, we were on a beach in Florida, and my mother, I didn't know what happened then, but my dad was yelling to get in the car, and my mother's running with us. But what happened is my mother ripped a whites only sign off the water fountain on a beach in Florida, and the restaurant guy who owned the restaurant called the police. So my mother took us to the Black Beach. And ironically, the police didn't come to the Black Beach. So we were safe. So for me, I always gravitate towards Black people because subconsciously and emotionally, that's where I'm safe. That's how I grew up. So, and that's very community-oriented culture. So,
we're going to talk more about all the exciting things that you're doing in media coming up in just a second. But because we were talking about your mom, and you were talking about the Black Panthers, will you share a little bit of the serendipity of how things started with your mom and
how
then
God
where
works.
It took you?
Yeah. So I grew up, knowing who Afeni Shakur was, because my mother was very into it. And she was actually a fundraiser for the Black Panther Party when the Panther 21s were arrested in 1969 and charged with 100 felony counts. And Afeni actually talks about it in her biography that was written by Jasmine Guy. The white church ladies from upstate New York who raised her bail money, one of them was my mother. But when I was in law school, Tupac died. And I didn't listen to Tupac in law school. My study partner did, Lita, and she went home. She was so upset. But after I graduated from law school, I moved down to LA and started interning at this law firm. One of their clients was the estate of Tupac Shakur because he had just died in 1996, and this was 1998. I was so excited because I knew who Afeni Shakur was. So when I met Afeni Shakur down at a fee hearing in the downtown courthouse in LA, because Tupac died without a will. So every producer agreement that had to be done, every songwriter split agreement, whatever we had to do always had to be approved by the judge. So when I met Afeni, I was like, oh my God, I know all about you and the 10-point program and the free breakfast program that you did in the Bronx and da-da-da-da-da. And right away she loved me. And it was just such a 360 situation. And actually, it was Afeni who convinced me to open my own firm. I mean, she kept saying, you got to open your own firm. And I'm like, what is she talking about? I've been sober like 10 minutes and practicing law like 5 minutes. Like, why is she saying it? But I ended up opening my own law firm in 2001 because she basically had it. And she's like, you're leaving tonight. Get your shit. Get my motherfucking files, motherfucker. Get my shit. Get out of that fucking office, bitch. Get to the fucking record company where I have an office and call me in the morning. Click.
and like even back from early in those days, your book is called Street Smart. You had to start to get a little bit gangster, literally, right? Because you were things were hot in Suge Land back then,
God,
right?
Yeah. So Suge went to prison on RICO charges. So he was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison. So during that time, Afeni, who's smart as shit, I mean, this is a woman, when she was arrested, if you guys don't know about the Panther 21s, you guys gotta learn about that because she represented herself. When all the Panthers had lawyers, she's like, no, if I'm going to go away for 370 years, then the last voice people are going to hear is my voice. And she represented herself and got herself acquitted.
Amazing.
So she's that person, super smart. I always tell people, that's how I learned how to practice law, like Afeni. So when Suge went to prison, she's like, the rights were in dispute because Tupac left behind over 100 unreleased recordings when he died. Interscope was the distributor, and they were saying that, he was signed to death row, so they're death row's recordings, and Afeni's like, fuck you, they are not. And she waged a war and went into court with a gazillion lawyers, and she won ownership of all her son's intellectual property. But this was all happening over a period of years. So until the court could, adjudicate the matter, we still had to work with him when we're putting out music. And the first album we put out was 1997, Are You Still Down? That was the first unreleased album after he died.
John B.
Right, John B.
I just gave a little shout out to Liz at the Wave over there. John B.
Yeah. So we had to consult with him while he was at Mule Creek Prison, which was really interesting. But when he got out of prison in 2002, he was a little agitated because he would want certain things to happen on the album, and Afeni would be like, we're not doing that, and we had our own creative control, and he was a little agitated when he got out. But really, we started doing the double album that was eventually released called Better Days. It was a double album, And that was the first album we did while he was out of prison. And that was interesting because we had to work with him in person. And he was really smart. Like, people didn't really understand how smart he was. He's a very smart guy.
I always say nobody's just one thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, even you can be an absolute pit bull, but you're one of the kindest, sweetest people I know. So how do you negotiate that when you see someone who is so smart, so good, but then also can be very threatening?
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. I've never been in the same room as Suge Knight.
Well, my barometer for fear is pretty high after having to work with Suge Knight. So it's not like now, there's nothing.
Yeah.
That, I'm just like, okay, like.
But even when you were in the thick of it, how did you go in kind of seeing the duality of him and do business? Like, how did you negotiate that within yourself?
Here's the thing. So our first meeting with him in person was at Interscope Records, and they moved to Colorado Boulevard. They were on Wilshire. But when he got out of prison, we had a meeting with him. And, all the lawyers were like, this is how we got to do it. Dina, you're only coming to the meeting to render technical music law advice when we need it, but you're not to talk. But they hadn't been dealing with Suge as we were, and I knew how he worked. I mean, he's smart. So the way it worked is when Tupac died, he had all these original contributors that contributed to the recordings and the underlying musical composition. So even though we wanted to put new contributions on his music, we still had to divide up the copyrights of the new work with the old contributors. So the contributors all shared in that too, because under the Copyright Act, absent an agreement, if you create music with someone, that person owns an undivided equal percentage of the whole. So they all had to get copyright shares, the old contributors, even though we might not be using their contributions. So when he sat down, he's like, look, Jimmy Iovine is like, Death Row is going to have control creatively of 10 tracks on the double album. And, the estate will have control of this anyway. And that was the plan. And I wasn't supposed to say anything. Okay. But we get in there and we start the meeting and Suge's like, well, this is what I'm doing. I want 10 songs. I'm getting 50% of each song, the publishing and da-da-da-da. And he's just going on, like on a business deal, what he's doing and just saying legally what he's doing. And everybody's sitting there. Like no one's talking. And I'm not supposed to talk. So I'm just like, it's like dead air. And finally, one of the lawyers under the table is like hitting me to talk. So I'm like supposed to talk. So I start saying, I go, you can't have 50%. And he's like, why not? And I go, because the old contributors, we had to make a deal with them so they don't sue our ass, because under the Copyright Act, we don't have agreements with them and all these songs could be in litigation. It would cost us more money. So we had to cut them a piece of that. So this is what's left for the new contribution. So, if you're going to get the producers and handle all that and you want to just have 50% of that share for your contributors, whatever's left. And he's like, okay, I get that. And then we went on to the next deal point, and we just kept going on the next deal point. And so by the time we were done, we had a whole thing arranged. And nobody said a fucking thing but me.
So really, it was you told the truth, right? That was such a powerful lesson I remember learning when I first came to LA, and you felt so much pressure. Like all these people were coming in to try to get us to play records, and you didn't want to make them mad. And what if the artist was there? But really, you have no choice but to tell the truth.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Now, flash forward to 2025. Before we start getting into Street Smart, the books, there's so many different people in the room that are working at the cross-section of entertainment and business, and they're entrepreneurs. Big question. What's your lay of the land of the entertainment business as we know it right now? Hollywood, music, tech. What are you seeing?
What I'm seeing is that the creator has a lot of control. If the art is good and they create a demand for the art, they have control. So all creators, I tell them, especially in music, you don't have to do deals with anybody. You know what I mean? You want companies to chase you, you know, and with all these platforms that we have, you know, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or X or whatever, Threads, like there's a lot of platforms that you could get your music out there. And it's very important. I mean, you know, it used to be when you and I started in the music business, when I first started in the music business as a lawyer, there were 17 major labels. Now there's 3.
It's insane.
But where everybody goes, oh, that's crazy. In a way, it's great for the creators because it puts the control in the creator's hands. And remember, signing a record deal, you get an advance, but an advance is a loan. Like, we still got to pay taxes on this. Like, why take that? You know, if you need the money to, like, make the music videos and stuff like that, you know, I understand that. But with all the creators out there and with AI and all the things, you know, you can meet people that are in a community like this, that are into content, that know how to do that. Like, the hands are in the creators right now, and I love it, love it, love it. And I want to tell you guys one thing that's very important. So we have the Copyright Act that protects 2 copyrights, the copyright in the sound recording and the copyright in the musical composition, which is the song that you write. And then we have the Lanham Act that protects trademarks. And trademark is a protection for your moniker, like Tupac, 2PAC, or your trade name, you know, Maroon 5 or whatever, you know? But what we don't have is a federal right of voice and likeness, which is a right of publicity. We don't have it, but we do not. So I woke up one day, a year and a half ago, to a #1 song by Drake and 21 Savage. And Savage's manager texted me going, "This ain't us." And I was like, oh my God, you know? And it took us 7 days to try and pull this track off all the DSPs. And I mean, it was a nightmare because there's no laws that protect us. So for example, if you're committing copyright infringement, you get a notice, you say, this is infringement, I'm going to sue you, and they got to pull it down. If not, it constitutes willful infringement, and the statutory damages are a lot of money. Same thing with trademark. So right now, in the Senate and the House, we have a bill pending called the No Fakes Act. And the No Fakes Act is a bipartisan bill, believe it or not, okay? Democrats and Republicans working together, which I know is a shocker, but for intellectual property, that they've done that, okay? And another thing I want to tell you guys, you're going to freak out when I tell you this. Intellectual property, which is copyrights, trademarks, all of that, intellectual property is a Republican issue. So the people that you really have to get on board are the Democrats. And that's where I came in and was very successful in the Music Modernization Act. So we have the No Fakes Act pending in Congress right now. And if that passes, it'll create a federal right in voice and likeness. So no more deep fakes. Okay? And it's someone that has a really, you know, unique voice like Cardi B will be able to license that voice if she wants to for a specific period. You know, and if someone uses her voice or her likeness without permission, they could be sued and have to pay many damages.
If tomorrow you had to go negotiate with Suge Knight or our current administration, who would you choose?
Probably Suge Knight. He's smart. So, like, with Suge Knight, like, there's always a reason that, you know, he's smart. He knows stuff.
So, you were saying that the power is in the creator's hands. You know, it's really interesting to me taking a look at the entirety of your career. I mean, you have been like the #1 lawyer on Billboard a million years in a row. You know, Dina is doing advocacy work and really making a huge impact, has an unbelievable law firm, 9,000 Sunset Building across from the Roxy. Life is good.
Yeah.
But now it seems like as the power is in the creator's hands, you're deciding that you want to do some creating.
Yeah, well, I was an artist before I was a music lawyer. So I was a musician. And I grew up, you know, playing music. I actually went to college on a music scholarship. I graduated with a degree in music, and that's what I wanted to do. But I was always the business person in the band, you know, and I was always the one dealing with the creepy promoters, which, trust me, were fucking creepy. Club owners, creepy.
I could see that.
So back then, I was always the one to be like, you know, pay it, you know, whatever. I was always the person in the band doing the business. But when I transferred to New Paltz, where I ended up graduating, that's where I grew up, I joined the concert committee there because the student union, you know, you go to college and the student union has all these student committees, and one of them was a concert committee called Jedi Productions, and I joined that. So I started producing concerts. Anyway, long story short, that was my first claim to fame, is like being in a band. And I actually opened up for Joan Jett back then.
I saw this. I want to shout out Evan Bogart. I just saw the story about things coming full circle for him.
Yes.
Evan is a good friend of ours and also CEO. His company is called Seeker, right?
Seeker Music, yeah.
And his father,
Neil Bogart.
had Casablanca Records and
Boardwalk Records.
And I think I saw Evan say when his father passed away, I Love Rock and Roll was number one.
Yeah, well, what happened is Joan and Kenny Laguna, her songwriter producer, who was like a makeshift manager, they put the record out themselves because 23 record companies turned her down. But what happened is when the song became so big, because Kenny would drive around to radio stations and ask the programmers to play it. This is way before radio was regulated by the government.
Right.
You know, so radio stations could actually play what they wanted to, you know. Now they're owned by, you know, two huge companies, really. But anyway, so the song there was so much demand for the song, they needed a bigger distributor, and that was Evan Bogart's dad.
And now Evan is back working with Joan Jett again.
Yes.
You represent her.
Yes.
And you said you opened for her.
I did in 1987.
So that brings things full circle. You're an artist and a creator to start.
Right.
But now
what's happening is I was approached by a music publisher the end of 2022 to say, you know, you should do a motivational book. So I ended up negotiating that deal, and I said I need to do it, you know, over a period of time. It can't happen right away because I love what I do. So it's up for pre-order now. It's called Street Smart: Succeeding in a Man's World, and it's a motivational book, and there's 10 chapters, and it's basically my story. But through all the perceived hardships and failures I went through, which looking back now, they were all obstacles that I overcame, that took me to another place where I pivoted, which became a great path that would have never happened had I not been in that situation. So that's what it is. And like the first chapter is called Overcoming Predispositioned Obstacles, right? So I grew up in the 70s, patriarchal family system. You know, everybody with authority was male. The police chief, the fire chief, the principals, the priests, everybody was male and, you know, that had all the power. Overcame all that. Plus I knew I was gay. So that was a thing. Back in the 70s, gay was not cool. Okay. You know, so that was a whole thing. And, you know, so I overcame all that. Second chapter, put yourself first. Third chapter, you know, recognize your triggers and change your patterns. You know, fourth chapter, use your intuition and your fine-tune your emotional intelligence. You know, fifth chapter, shit or get off the pot. Sixth chapter, madman reality versus Barbie world fantasy. Like, it's really great. And it goes through all of my trajectory, you know, everything I've done. And at the end, the last chapter, which you're in, is chapter 10, give back and help people.
Oh, that's amazing. You know, Dina, it's funny. You were talking about the rise and fall, the peaks and the valleys in your career. Yesterday, I was driving the kids to school and Drake Nokia came on. And I was like, look, this is such a good lesson. No matter what happens in your life, when you think it is all over and you feel bullied, you feel kicked, everybody hates you, you can still have a good song, right? That was my parenting lesson of the day. If people feel like they've been knocked on their ass and like are going through it, they might feel hopeless or defeated. What tools have you used in your career to get back up?
That's a great question. It's just the belief in yourself. I mean, you have to follow your instincts, and you also find that one person that believes in you. Like, I had two people in my life that believed in me. My mother was my advocate growing up because, I wanted to be in a band and play guitar, and girls didn't play guitar. I mean, my mother would tell me, like, they don't like Karen Carpenter because she plays the drums, and only boys play the drums, and they don't like Nina Simone because she sings about lynching and da-da-da. So all these things that she would tell me and teach me, she was my advocate. And she's like, nobody's going to want you to play music, but I'm going to get you guitar lessons on the side and da-da-da-da-da. And then when I met Afeni Shakur, she became my person. And these two women gave me a lot of confidence by telling me I could. I mean, I don't know if you might know this, but when I was 13, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. So they called my mother, the school called my mother, and they said, she's got to go to BOCES. And BOCES was the technical school instead of high school where you learn how to be a carpenter and, mechanic and hairdresser, whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but can you imagine me fixing your car? I don't know.
I'd be more worried about you fixing my hair.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, my mother said, no, she's not fucking doing that. She loves the music teacher and she has friends, so figure the fuck out how to teach her, but she's staying there and don't talk to her about this or I'll kick your ass. Like, that was my mother.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh my gosh, they were afraid of my mother. And then I met Afeni and it was the same thing. So at my internship, the boss would be like, oh, here's what we need to do for this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking to myself, well, she's not the type of person that you do something and report back. Like, she needs to be involved. But he didn't get that about her. So I started arguing with him. I'd be like, well, we shouldn't do that. And he was, well, I've been practicing law 20 years and you've only been here for 6 months and blah, 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 blah. But I didn't let that affect me. I mean, it did sometimes, like, oh, I'm not good enough or whatever. But I just followed my instincts. So for everybody here, that's the thing. If it feels wrong, it's wrong. I told this girl recently, she graduated from college, and she wanted to work in content. She wants to be like a content creator, work for a social media company or something. So I said to her, well, look, you got to really have experience to go to get engaged or crowd surf or FYI. Even though you just need to have a little bit on your resume, but you can come, you can intern for Samantha Bullock. You could do our social media for the podcast and the book, and they can teach you stuff, whatever. And she's like, okay. And then she sends me an email. Well, I need this amount of money. I need health insurance, and I need this. And I called her up. I go, girl, half your friends are going to Enterprise Rent-A-Car because it starts you at $85,000 a year with benefits. But you know what? When they're 50, okay, and have drinking problems, they're still going to be at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, okay? Do you want to live your dream? Because you're 23 now, so this is when you take risks, okay? You don't have kids. You're not taking care of a sick parent, okay? This is where you fucking take risks. And when I became a lawyer, I couldn't find a damn job because I didn't have experience. Nobody told me go do an internship for lawyers in law school. I taught guitar lessons and was in a lipstick lesbian band. So by the time I graduated from law school, no one wanted me because I didn't even know what the fuck to do. So I had to wait tables at night. My uncle got me a job working at a law firm downtown that did insurance defense litigation, that paid a salary and a car allowance, and I didn't take that job. And instead, I waited tables at night in West Hollywood and interned for free for this music lawyer. And I ended up meeting Afeni Shakur there.
Oh, that's amazing. So, yeah, okay, go ahead, clap for that, for sure. I want to that was perfect timing to come back to Afeni, but I got to remind everyone. So everybody in this room is on the FYI project, where we're all collaborating and we can stay connected. If you have a question for Dina, go ahead and throw it into the discussion right now. I already know some have popped in. We'll have time to take a few.
FYI is an AI-powered messenger and productivity platform crafted for creatives and their teams. Focus your ideas with your collaborators using an encrypted messenger, develop your vision, utilizing media-rich project tools, and bring those ideas to life by sharing them with the world. With the AI personas in the FYI app serving as your creative co-pilots, you can ask FYI.AI to draft stories, song lyrics, product descriptions, marketing copy, or any written content and see the results within seconds. Download FYI today for free. Now available in the App Store and on Google Play.
But, going back to Afeni and media, you didn't tell what I think is the most exciting part. What's in the works?
You mean about the
movie?
Oh.
Am I not supposed to talk about that?
Yeah, you can talk about the movie.
Okay.
So, it's time for Afeni biopic or scripted series. So we're doing that. It's going to be called Peace, Love, and Respect, which is how she signed all the contracts. Peace, Love, and Respect, Afeni Shakur. So Peace, Love, and Respect, the Afeni Shakur story. So it's going to start the day that she was taken by the FBI, April 3rd, 1969. And the movie goes up until the day she was acquitted, which is June 3rd, 1971, 2 weeks before Tupac was born. It's going to be a great movie.
I am dying to see this one. Okay, we've got a question from JT. What would you say is the cheat code for creators and artists to find lawyers and agencies that want to work with them?
Creating the value. So the client has to have the value. So creating the works, getting the works out there, getting the songs out there on all the social media platforms, building your audience, because the demand, and when that happens, people freak out. It's like this rapper called Central C. He's from the UK. And let me tell you something. This guy built this, European base of fans that were just insane. Like 10,000 people showing up on the street in London trying to get into a club that only holds 2,500 people. And it's like every single agency and record company was stalking this guy to sign him up. You know what I mean? But by then you have so much power, that you can just figure out how you want to, do the deal, which I always say to my clients, own everything. Own all your intellectual property and just licensing it to people.
Okay. Eldorado Jones has another question. What measures does the pending likeness no fake bill take to address the misuse of AI in terms of creating fakes?
So let me tell you about that. So there's two things. So the No Fakes Act for every American would create an intellectual property right in your voice and likeness. Now, let's be real. It's only the people that are really famous whose voice and likeness is going to be commercially valuable, where people are going to want to license it, and people are going to want to steal it, and people are going to want to put shit up without your permission. But it's available to every American when the bill passes. But on the other side of that, AI, these machines that are ingesting copyrighted works to learn, those platforms need to do licensing agreements with all the record companies and the publishers to pay the creators. So that's a thing. Because I was just saying earlier before the session, like you can literally go on to like a Chat GPT or any of these and say, please write me a song in the style of Wu-Tang Clan, make it funny and sassy, and within 5 seconds you get this song. Well, how did that AI platform know the style of Wu-Tang Clan? Well, because it studied all the music of Wu-Tang Clan. So these fucking companies need to do these license agreements and pay for the creative work. So we're working on that right now. So that's a whole different issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Part 2.
So would that be similar to how stadiums or other live venues have to pay into performing rights organizations?
Yes. So let me give you an example. So I love this question. So stadiums, they have to pay in order to have licenses with BMI and ASCAP and the other performing rights societies to pay for the performance of works. It would be similar. However, ASCAP and BMI are governed by government decrees that were enacted 80 years ago, and all those licenses are compulsory and mandated, and the creators don't have the power to negotiate in a free market. I fucking hate that. So I'd like to have voluntary licenses. Look, I also want to have a 10-inch dick, but, you can't get everything you want, but you dream big, you know what I mean? And so what I want them to be voluntary licenses, because these stadiums, these are compulsory licenses that are subject to the consent decrees, which is why I sued the Department of Justice in 2016 over these wretched things. Did you guys know that?
No.
Oh my God. I woke up one day to this law that had been mandated in the middle of the night called 100% licensing, which means this. Say you're an ASCAP writer and you're a BMI writer. Well, right now, Spotify, say, or iHeartRadio, whatever, they have to get licenses with both ASCAP and BMI to pay the writers. Yeah. Well, the tech community convinces the Department of Justice that that's too onerous and that they should just be able to pick one. Whichever one they want, just one. So we woke up to this, and it was like, how are we going to do this? If you're ASCAP and you're BMI, and the tech companies pick ASCAP and pay you everything, then you, the songwriter, is in charge of having to pay your co-writers. You're a songwriter, not an accountant. You're not going to collect money. So it was this horrible thing. So I sued the Department of Justice, and I alleged that songwriters were third-party beneficiaries of these outdated government decrees, and it was an unconstitutional taking of our property rights under the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Fuckers.
All right.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
You know what the first question I ever asked AI was?
What?
When generative AI first came out, I asked if it would rewrite Tupac's Brenda's Got a Baby as if Brenda defeated the odds and grew up a great mom. It did. Sorry, that's a nerd moment. Okay.
By the way, shout out to Aunt Glo, who's going to be 80 years old next month.
Oh, and shout out to Molly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to do 2 more questions for you, okay? And then you're going to have some homework. This made me laugh. Your Enterprise rental car when you're 50 story made me laugh because back in the day after yoga, we had a mutual friend who was sick of their life in the music business. And they thought they wanted to be a lawyer. And we were sitting and we were having coffee and our friend said, but I have to finish my bachelor's and then I would have to go to law school. By the time I finish all of this, I'm going to be 50. And Dina jumps across the table and goes, you're going to be 50 either way. Wouldn't you rather be 50 and be a lawyer? And so the next question is, what does a day in the life look like as an entertainment attorney? I imagine it's a lot of meetings.
Well, no. I always have my own agenda. Like I'm working out in my gym and I'm like, this is what I'm going to do today. And I do have meetings scheduled in Zooms, but there's always a drama. Okay. Whether it could be anything. Waking up to a deep fake that derails my whole day. Or, someone, decides they're going to sue somebody because they're not getting paid. Or someone's all over TMZ because they said that they did something that they really didn't do. I mean, there's a lot of fires that I'm in the middle of.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that.
Okay, this is going to be the last question. Okay. I'm going to ask for now, because we're all pre-ordering your Street Smart book, which is coming out in October, and you can pre-order it on Amazon right now. What was your favorite part of actually writing a book? And which part were you ready for it to be over as soon as it started?
What I really loved about writing the book is to be able to get out. When I started talking about all these perceived failures or things that society would think they were failures, I started to look at them and see how it led to another thing, which led to this, which led to that. So once I started seeing that, I was like, this is magical, And then the magic of it came out and I was very, into it. The thing that was really hard was chapter 6, which was going through Build a Foundation, Not a Fantasy. because chapter 7 is Madman Reality versus Barbie World Fantasy. I thought it was chapter 6, but it's not. Chapter 6 is Build a Foundation, Not a Fantasy. And that was a hard chapter because building a foundation for me meant I had to get my own credibility. And that was very painful to write about and learn and relive. So for example, when I finally started my own law firm, even though I had the estate of Tupac Shakur as a client, I started a website. And in the music legal community back then, that was like super creepy. Like, oh my God, she has tattoos and she even has a website. Like, she's not credible. You know what I mean? So it was like dealing with all these mostly white guys, very successful at prominent firms that would treat me like complete crap, but had to deal with me because they had contributors on the Tupac albums that were selling millions and millions in records. But they would always have something to say on the phone that would be snarky or just would like try to make me feel less than. That was very hard. And I had to like go through those situations in the book, and to look at that and relive that was really hard. And one stupid asshole lawyer made a comment about, like, I don't know, something like, well, maybe she knows where the Copyright Act is or something. Like, it was a fucking shitty remark just because he probably had a small dick and had to make himself feel better. But anyway, the point of the matter is that led me to start writing a blog for this online magazine called Cosmic Debris Magazine. And I wrote a blog like every month about some hot tip in the music industry. Then that blog started taking off, and one of the teachers at the Musicians Institute asked me if I would be interested in teaching a class at the Musicians Institute. So I did that for 2 years, which led me to teaching at UCLA, and I was at UCLA for 20 years. So had I not gone through that very painful situation, because that guy tried to make me feel like shit, like, well, maybe she doesn't even know how to write this contract, so we'll write it. That's what it was about. Like, she doesn't know how to write it. We'll write it and send it to you. From that very painful, shitty circumstance, it led me to all these things that ended up changing lots of people's lives.
All right. Make some noise for Dina LaPolt.
Thanks for listening to the Culture FYI'RS Podcast. Make sure to download the FYI app, available now in the App Store and Google Play. Check out this episode's notes for a project link to this Culture FYI'RS event, including a look at more projects from the FYI community. This episode's Culture FYI'RS event was produced by FYI co-founder will.i.am, Amina Mohammed, Emily Choi, Frankie Sandoval, Juliana Rodriguez, Jafet Chavez, Julie Pilot, Lily Cam, Marcus Nielsen Colling, Ronial Madlani, Sean Kantrowitz, Shania Jafari, Taylor Wang, the FYI product team, and of course the FYI community. The podcast is edited by Rob Van Vranken. Make sure to subscribe to Culture FYI'RS wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss an episode. Learn more about FYI by visiting FYI.FYI.